"Mom, technically, this isn't your house anymore." Nathan said it so casually that for a second I thought I had misunderstood him. My fork stopped halfway to my plate. Across the table, my daughter-in-law Brooke looked at him, and something passed between them so quickly I might have missed it if I had still been the kind of mother who looked away from uncomfortable things. I was 71 years old, and I had lived in that house for 34 years. My late husband Raymond and I had raised Nathan there, paid every mortgage payment there, replaced the roof twice, refinished the oak floors ourselves, and planted the maple tree outside the kitchen window when our son was still small enough to sit on his father's shoulders. Yet Nathan had just told me the house was no longer mine. "What exactly do you mean by that?" I asked. My voice surprised even me. It was steady. Brooke reached for her water glass but did not drink. Nathan leaned back in his chair as though we were discussing a utility bill. If you enjoy family betrayal stories, hidden wills, and mothers who finally receive justice, subscribe to EverNest Stories. More powerful stories are coming every day. Brooke and I have been talking about fixing up the upstairs bedroom and maybe renting it out. It would help cover some expenses. "You're planning to rent a room in my house?" I asked. He sighed. "Mom, that's what I'm trying to explain. Legally, it's Brooke's house now." The kitchen seemed to become very quiet. The old refrigerator hummed behind me. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower started 2 houses down. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary Sunday evening. Nothing about the room looked different, yet suddenly I felt like a guest sitting at my own dining table. "I never gave Brooke this house." Nathan rubbed his forehead. "You signed the transfer paperwork months ago. We did it so the property wouldn't get tangled up in probate someday. You knew that." I looked at Brooke. She finally met my eyes. Her expression was calm, almost patient, the way someone might look at an elderly woman who had forgotten where she left her purse. "Eleanor," she said softly, "there was a lot of paperwork after Raymond passed. As understandable if you don't remember every document." That sentence bothered me more than Nathan's. Not because she sounded cruel, because she sounded prepared. I folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate. "Maybe you're right." Nathan's shoulders relaxed immediately. Brooke's did too. That was when I knew I should say nothing else. I stood, carried my plate to the kitchen, and poured myself another cup of coffee. Behind me their voices dropped. They must have thought the running faucet covered them. It didn't. "You said she'd never check," Brooke whispered. Nathan answered too quietly for me to catch the words. I kept my back to them and stirred cream into my coffee even though I had stopped taking cream years ago. My hand did not shake. I had learned something during 46 years of marriage to Raymond. When people think you are confused, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let them keep thinking it. Nathan and Brooke left 20 minutes later. Brooke kissed my cheek. Nathan reminded me to take my blood pressure medication, as if concern could erase what I had just heard. I locked the door behind them and went straight to the hall closet. On the top shelf sat Raymond's old metal document box. Inside were insurance policies, tax receipts, our marriage certificate, and the deed we received after making the final mortgage payment. I carried it to the kitchen table and read the first page slowly. There it was. Eleanor M. Whitaker. My name. My address. My house. I checked the date. I checked the signature. Then I sat in Raymond's old chair and looked toward the dark window over the sink. If I had truly transferred ownership to Brooke, there would be a record of it somewhere. And if I hadn't, there would be a record of that too. The next morning I did not call Nathan. I did not call Brooke. At 9:15, I picked up the phone and called the county recorder's office. The woman at the county recorder's office told me I could come in and request a certified copy of any document connected to my property. But before I drove downtown, I wanted to understand how I had reached a point where my own son could tell me I no longer owned the home I had spent most of my adult life paying for. Raymond and I bought the place 34 years earlier when Nathan was 9. It was a modest 2-story house on a quiet street lined with maples, and when we first moved in, the kitchen cabinets were brown, the furnace rattled every winter, and the backyard fence leaned toward the alley. We could not afford contractors for every problem, so Raymond learned to repair things himself. I painted walls, sanded trim, planted flowers, and kept every receipt in a folder marked house. We paid the mortgage month after month, through college bills, car repairs, and years when money felt tighter than either of us admitted. The day we made the final payment, Raymond brought home a grocery store cake with blue icing and wrote paid in full across the top himself. We laughed because the letters were crooked. I still had a photograph of that cake. 3 years ago, when Raymond died, the house stopped feeling celebratory. It became quieter, but it never stopped being mine. Nathan began visiting more often during those first months. He offered to handle property taxes online, renew the homeowner's insurance, and organize paperwork I had always managed with Raymond. First, I was grateful. Grief makes simple decisions feel heavier than they should. When Nathan said, "Let me take care of this one, Mom," I usually let him. Then Brooke started joining him. She created online accounts, suggested automatic payments, and told me I should simplify things now that I was alone. She never sounded demanding. That was what made it easy to agree. "You have enough to worry about," she would say. "We can handle the boring stuff." I remembered one afternoon when Nathan asked for a copy of my driver's license because he said the insurance company needed updated identification. Another time, he brought a stack of papers and placed small yellow tabs beside the signature lines. I had asked what they were. "Routine authorizations," he told me. "Nothing changes. It just lets me help if you need me." I signed some of them without reading every page. That memory sat heavily with me now. Still, one other memory came back even more clearly. Raymond and I had been sitting on the back porch during his final summer, drinking iced tea while the evening cooled. He had spent weeks organizing our estate papers because he wanted everything straightforward for me. "Ellie," he said, using the nickname only he used, "if anybody ever puts a deed in front of you, read every word. Do not sign away property because someone says it is just paperwork. Not even family." At the time, I teased him for being overly cautious. Now I wished I had listened more carefully. I carried Raymond's metal document box upstairs and spread everything across the dining table. Tax statements, insurance policies, mortgage satisfaction papers, the original deed. Nothing inside showed Brooke's name. I found Nathan's old authorization forms, but none clearly transferred ownership. By 8:30 the next morning, I was dressed, my documents were inside a large brown envelope, and my purse was on my shoulder. I looked once at the framed photograph of Raymond near the front door. Then I locked the house behind me and drove 12 miles downtown. I was no longer trying to remember what Nathan said I had done. I was going to find out what the public record said I had done. The county recorder's office occupied the second floor of an old brick government building with polished tile floors and fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly pale. I arrived 10 minutes after opening, carrying Raymond's brown envelope against my chest as if it contained something more fragile than paper. A woman behind the counter looked up from her computer and smiled. Her nameplate read Diane Foster. "What can I help you find?" she asked. I gave her my address and explained that I wanted to confirm the current owner of the property. I expected her to ask why. She did not. She simply typed the address into her system, paused, and then looked at the screen a little longer than I liked. "Is your name Eleanor Whitaker?" she asked. "Yes." Diane turned the monitor slightly away from the public area and checked another page. "The current owner of record is Brooke Whitaker." Hearing Brooke's name from a stranger made the situation feel more real than anything Nathan had said at dinner. I placed my hand on the counter. "Can you tell me when that changed?" Diane nodded and opened the recorded document. "A quitclaim deed was filed 8 months ago." She explained that I could purchase a certified copy, so I did. When she handed it to me, I moved to a small table near the windows and read every line. Grantor, Eleanor M. Whitaker. Grantee Brooke Whitaker. Property address mine. I read it again. Then again. My signature appeared at the bottom. At first glance it looked convincing. The long sweep under the W was there. The middle initial leaned slightly forward. But I had signed my name thousands of times. Something about this one felt rehearsed, like someone had learned the shape without understanding the movement. I kept reading until I reached the notary section. February 12th. I stopped. That date was not vague to me. It was Judith's birthday. My younger sister had turned 68, and I had flown to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to spend 4 days with her. We had eaten dinner at a small restaurant near the plaza that evening. Judith had insisted on ordering green chili stew even though I warned her it would be too spicy. I could still picture the silver birthday earrings I gave her. I looked back at the document. According to the notarization, I had personally appeared before a notary in my home county that same day. I returned to Diane's counter. Does this mean the person signing was supposed to be physically present? I asked. She chose her words carefully. The acknowledgement states that Eleanor M. Whitaker personally appeared before the notary on February 12. I felt my fingers tighten around the paper. I was in New Mexico. Diane did not speculate. She simply told me that if I believed a recorded document contained an unauthorized signature or an inaccurate notarization, I should speak with an attorney and preserve any evidence showing where I had been. I thanked her. Outside, I sat in my car without starting the engine. I opened my phone and searched my photographs from February. There was Judith, smiling beside a birthday cake in Santa Fe. The timestamp read February 12th, 6:43 in the evening. Then I found my airline confirmation. My return flight had not left New Mexico until February 14th. I placed the certified deed on the passenger seat and stared at the two dates. Nathan had told me I signed the house over willingly. The county record said I had appeared in person to do it. My travel record said I was more than 1,000 miles away. For the first time, I stopped wondering whether I had forgotten something. Someone else had counted on me believing that I had. I drove home with the certified deed on the passenger seat and my airline confirmation open on my phone, but I did not call Nathan. That was the first decision I made that felt entirely like my own. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had already decided what I would say if he contacted me. Nothing important. Nothing true. I carried Raymond's document box inside, placed the deed beneath a stack of old insurance papers, and made myself a turkey sandwich as if it were an ordinary Tuesday. At 11:47, Nathan called. "Did you get everything sorted out this morning?" he asked. His tone was light, but the question came too quickly. I looked through the kitchen window at the maple tree Raymond had planted with him decades ago. "I think so," I said. I probably got myself confused. There are so many papers now. Silence. Just half a second, but I heard it. Then Nathan's voice softened. "That is what Brooke and I have been trying to tell you, Mom. You do not need to worry about all this complicated stuff." I almost smiled. "You are probably right." He sounded relieved. That relief told me more than an argument would have. Brooke called less than an hour later. She asked if I had eaten lunch, reminded me about an upcoming pharmacy refill, then carefully circled back to the house. "You know we only want to make things easier for you," she said. "At your age, there is no reason to carry every responsibility alone." Her words were gentle. That was what made them so unsettling. She was not trying to convince me that the transfer was legitimate. She was trying to convince me that my own memory could not be trusted. After we hung up, I opened Raymond's metal box again. This time I was not looking for the deed. I was looking for February 12th. I found my credit card statements first. On February 11th, there was a charge from Albuquerque International Sunport. On February 12th, a restaurant charge from Santa Fe. On February 13th, a bookstore purchase a few blocks from Judith's house. On February 14th, another airport charge before my flight home. For consecutive days. More than 1,000 miles away from the county where someone claimed I had stood before a notary. Then I searched my email. Judith had sent me photographs the morning after her birthday. One showed the two of us outside the restaurant, wrapped in coats beneath strings of patio lights. Another showed the small silver earrings I had given her. The timestamp was there. February 12th. I called Judith, but I did not tell her why I was asking. "Do you remember what time we went to dinner on your birthday?" I said. She laughed. "Of course. You complained because I made the reservation for 6:30, and you said people our age should eat earlier." That sounded like me. I wrote it down. Then I asked if she still had the photographs. "Every one of them," she said. "Why?" "I am organizing paperwork." It was not exactly a lie. By late afternoon, my dining table was covered with small, ordinary pieces of my life. Airline receipts, credit card statements, photographs, emails, Raymond's original deed, the certified copy from the county. I arranged them by date. The deed said I had been in one place. Everything else said I had been somewhere entirely different. For months, Nathan and Brooke had spoken to me as if age had made me unreliable. They had offered to remember things for me, manage things for me, explain things to me. Sitting there, I finally understood the usefulness of that story. If I questioned the paperwork, they could say I had forgotten. If I objected, they could say I was overwhelmed. If I noticed something wrong, they could call it confusion. I looked at the signature again. It was close to mine. Close enough for someone who expected no one to check. I placed the deed at the center of the table and set my Santa Fe restaurant receipt beside it. I was done, asking myself whether my memory had failed. Now I needed to find out whose plan had depended on me believing it had. The next morning I called Calvin Mercer, the attorney who had helped Raymond organize our estate papers years earlier. His office was 20 minutes away in a narrow brick building near the courthouse, and by 10:30 I was sitting across from him with Raymond's metal box at my feet and the certified deed on his desk. Calvin was 66, silver-haired, careful with his words, and the kind of man who read a page twice before commenting on it. He studied the deed first. Then he compared it with Raymond's original documents and my travel records from Santa Fe. Your location on February 12th matters, he said. But there is something else here I want to understand. He pointed to the legal description near the center of the page. To me it looked like the usual collection of lot numbers and subdivision references I had seen on property papers before. Calvin turned to his computer and requested the recorded chain of title connected to my address. We waited quietly while the documents loaded. I watched his expression change, not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. This deed was prepared before the date it was supposedly signed, he said. That is not unusual by itself. What interests me is where the completed document was supposed to be returned after recording. At the top of the final page was a mailing address I had skimmed over 3 times. It belonged to a small property management office across town. I recognized the street immediately. Brooke had worked there for nearly 4 years before moving to her current job. She knows that office, I said. Calvin looked at me. How well? She used to handle administrative paperwork there. He made a note. Then he asked a question that seemed unrelated. Has Nathan or Brooke ever had a copy of your driver's license? I remembered the afternoon instantly. Nathan had come over with his laptop and told me the homeowner's insurance company needed updated identification. He scanned the front and back of my license at the dining table while Brooke organized papers beside him. Yes, I said. Nathan made a copy. Calvin leaned back. Did you receive anything from the insurance company afterward confirming that request? I searched my memory. Nothing. No, he asked whether I still had old emails from Nathan and Brooke. I opened my phone and searched. There were hundreds. Most were ordinary family messages, grocery lists, appointment reminders, photographs of weekend dinners. Then I found one from 9 months earlier. Brooke had written, "Make sure you bring Eleanor's identification tomorrow. They will need everything together." At the time I assumed she meant insurance. Calvin asked me to forward it. He still did not accuse anyone of anything. That restraint made me trust him more. "Eleanor," he said, "you have enough here to justify a serious review. But I do not want you confronting Nathan or Brooke yet." "Why not?" "Because right now they believe you are confused and compliant. If they think you know what we are examining, they may change their behavior, move documents, or create explanations before we understand the full picture." I looked down at my hands. For 3 years, Nathan had told me he was simplifying my life. Brooke had told me I was carrying too much. Every favor had seemed small. Every request had sounded reasonable. Copy of my identification. A signature beside a yellow tab. An online password shared because family was supposed to be trusted. Calvin gathered the documents into a neat stack. "Go home. Say nothing. If they bring you anything else to sign, do not refuse immediately. Take a copy first." I nodded. Before I left, he tapped the certified deed once with his finger. The transfer itself may not be the end of what they intended. I stopped at the door. "What do you mean?" He looked back at the record on his screen. People rarely go to this much trouble just to change a name on paper. 3 days after my meeting with Calvin, Nathan arrived at my house carrying a black folder and wearing the careful smile he used whenever he wanted something to feel harmless. Brooke came in behind him with 2 coffees from the shop near their neighborhood, one prepared exactly the way I used to order it before I stopped taking cream. That detail almost made me laugh. They had remembered my old coffee order, but apparently expected me to forget who owned my home. We sat at the dining table where Raymond and I had once helped Nathan with school projects. Nathan opened the folder and pushed several pages toward me. "Mom, this is what I mentioned before," he said. "Brooke found a good way to finance the renovations without putting pressure on anyone." I kept my face neutral. "What kind of financing?" Brooke answered before Nathan could. "Nothing complicated. We can use some of the value in the property, fix the kitchen, update the upstairs bathroom, and make the house more useful." She said the property, not your house. I looked down at the pages. There were references to a lender, estimated closing costs, property value, and a loan amount large enough to make me read it twice. Nathan tapped the signature section. "This part just confirms that you understand the arrangement." Calvin's advice came back to me immediately. "Do not refuse. Get a copy." I reached for my reading glasses and put them on slowly. "I want to look at every page." Brooke shifted in her chair. "Of course, but most of it is standard language." "Standard language still has words in it," I said. Nathan forced a small laugh. No one else did. I read for several minutes, then took out my phone. "What are you doing?" Brooke asked. "Taking pictures so I can remember what I sign." Her expression changed for only a second. "Why are you suddenly so suspicious?" I looked at her over the top of my glasses. "At my age, I like to remember what I sign." The room went quiet. Nathan cleared his throat and said there was no rush, but I noticed he closed the folder sooner than before. I photographed every page they had placed in front of me. Then I told them I wanted to sleep on it. Brooke reminded me that interest rates could change. Nathan said the lender was waiting. I smiled and said, "Then they can wait one more day." After they left, I called Calvin. He asked me to send the photographs immediately. Less than an hour later, he called back. His voice was calm, but there was no softness in it. "Eleanor, this is not simply a renovation loan." I sat down at the kitchen table. "What is it?" "It appears to be a cash-out refinance structured around the current recorded owner." I looked toward the living room, at the mantel Raymond built himself. "Explain that to me plainly." Calvin did. If the transaction went forward, a substantial portion of the equity built into the house could be converted into borrowed cash secured by the property. The number on the paperwork was more than $180,000. I stared at the wall calendar without seeing it. Raymond and I had spent decades building that equity one payment at a time. It was not a windfall. It was 34 years of work made visible in numbers. Where would the money go? I asked. "That is what I am trying to determine," Calvin said. "But the documents do not read like a simple home improvement plan." I thought about Nathan saying the upstairs room could help with expenses. Brooke saying the kitchen needed updating. Small explanations. Comfortable explanations. Calvin continued. "Do not sign anything. I am going to contact the appropriate parties and make sure no further transaction moves forward without scrutiny." After we hung up, I returned to the dining table and opened Raymond's old mortgage folder. Inside was the photograph of the grocery store cake from the day we paid off the house. The blue icing still read "paid in full" in Raymond's crooked handwriting. I placed my phone beside it, the refinance amount glowing on the screen. That was when I understood what Calvin had meant. Changing the name on the deed may never have been the final goal. The house itself was valuable, but what Nathan and Brooke appeared to be reaching for was everything Raymond and I had built inside it. The call from Nathan came the following afternoon. I had just finished watering the geraniums on the back porch when my phone rang. He did not begin with "Hello, Mom. Did you contact somebody about the house?" His voice was sharper than I had heard it in years. I set the watering can beside the steps. "Why do you ask?" "The lender stopped everything. They said there is a title issue and they cannot move forward until it is resolved." I looked. Across the yard at the fence Raymond had rebuilt 12 summers ago. Then I suppose they found something worth resolving. Nathan went silent. "You talked to a lawyer, did you not?" "I talked to someone who understands paperwork." His breathing changed. "Mom, Brooke and I were trying to help you. You are turning this into something it is not." For 3 years, that sentence had worked on me in one form or another. "You are worrying too much. You misunderstood. Let us handle it." This time it sounded different. Nathan, if everything is exactly what you say it is, then a review should not bother you. He tried another approach. Do you understand what this could do to us financially? I almost asked him why my house had become part of his finances, but I kept the question to myself. I have to go, I said. We will talk later. Brooke arrived 40 minutes after Nathan hung up. She did not bring coffee this time. She stood on my front porch with her purse tucked under one arm and asked if she could come inside. I let her in. We sat in the living room, but she stayed near the edge of the sofa. Eleanor, I do not know what Calvin Mercer has told you, but Nathan is extremely upset. The fact that she knew Calvin's name told me Nathan had already been searching for answers. Why? I asked. Because you froze a legitimate transaction. I did not freeze anything. My attorney asked questions. Brooke pressed her lips together. Those questions could cost us a great deal of money. There it was again. I thought the money was for my kitchen, I said. It is for improvements and other family expenses. What other expenses? That is not the point. Her patience finally began to thin. The house is legally mine. You agreed to that months ago. I folded my hands in my lap. How certain are you? She stared at me. What does that mean? Exactly what I asked. Brooke stood and walked toward the fireplace, then turned back. Nathan told me you understood the transfer. And you believed him? Of course. Then there should be no problem. Her face changed. Not fear. Calculation. I had seen that expression before without understanding it. Now I did. You are trying to punish us, she said. No, Brooke. I am trying to understand how a house I never remember giving away became yours. The front door opened before she could answer. Nathan had used the spare key I gave him after Raymond died. He stepped inside and looked from Brooke to me. What is going on? Brooke spoke quickly. Your mother has decided I am some kind of criminal. I never said that. Nathan turned toward me. Then stop treating us like we stole something. I held his gaze. How can I ruin your finances with the house you say I willingly gave you? Neither of them answered. Brooke looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at the floor. It was the first time since Sunday dinner that they did not seem to have the same story ready. And for the first time I understood that whatever had happened to my house, the truth might not be something they had shared equally. Calvin asked all three of us to meet at his office 2 days later. Nathan arrived first. Brooke came 5 minutes after him and took the chair farthest from mine. No one made small talk. Calvin placed a thin stack of documents in the center of the conference table and began with the certified deed from the county. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. He simply read the dates. February 12th. Eleanor M. Whitaker listed as grantor. Brooke Whitaker listed as grantee. Then he placed my airline itinerary beside it. My flight to New Mexico had left on February 10th. My return flight was February 14th. Next came my credit card statement. A restaurant charge in Santa Fe on February 12th. Then Judith's photographs, each carrying the same date. Calvin turned the deed toward Nathan. This notarization states that your mother personally appeared before the notary in this county on February 12th. Nathan stared at the page. Brooke told me Mom signed everything before her trip. Brooke looked at him sharply. That is not what I said. Calvin did not react. He opened another folder. There is more. He had obtained correspondence connected to the preparation and return of the deed. The return address belonged to the property management office where Brooke once worked. One email from that office, sent weeks before the deed was recorded, referred to identification documents and a prepared transfer package. Another message had been sent from Brooke's personal account. She had written that the owner was elderly, and that the paperwork needed to be completed quickly, because a future financing application depended on clear title. Brooke leaned forward. That does not prove I did anything improper. I was trying to organize things for the family. Calvin slid one more page across the table. It was an email Nathan had sent Brooke several months before the transfer. I watched him recognize it before he read it aloud. Mom is never going to put the house in your name. She already told me she wants to keep it as long as she lives. The room went still. Brooke turned toward him. You said she might change her mind. Nathan shook his head. I said we could talk to her again. Calvin asked a simple question. Did Eleanor ever tell either of you that she agreed to transfer ownership to Brooke? Nathan looked at me. For the first time, he did not answer immediately. Not directly, he said. Brooke exhaled through her nose. Nathan, be careful. No, he said quietly. She never told me that. I felt something inside me settle. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just clarity. Nathan turned to Brooke. You told me she signed because she finally agreed. Brooke's voice became tighter. You wanted the refinance as much as I did. Do not pretend you were not part of this. That was when Nathan looked at the cash-out refinance documents Calvin had placed beside the deed. He looked older than he had 2 days earlier. I thought Mom had agreed to the transfer, he said. I thought the paperwork was done. I believed that he wanted me to accept the distinction. Maybe part of it was true. Maybe Brooke had handled more than he understood. But I remembered Sunday dinner. I remembered him telling me the house was legally hers. I remembered him pressing papers toward me and calling them routine. Nathan, I said, you may not have known every detail. But you knew I had never sat down with you and said I wanted to give Brooke my house. He lowered his eyes. Mom, you knew enough to ask questions. You chose not to. Brooke looked at me as if she expected anger. I had none to give her. The documents were doing all the work. Calvin gathered them into order again. County record, travel record, photographs, emails, refinance paperwork. One page after another. For weeks I had wondered whether age had made me unreliable. Sitting at that table, I finally saw the truth clearly. My memory had not failed me. The people closest to me had simply found it convenient when I doubted it. It took several weeks before the paperwork was finally corrected, but for the first time in months I did not feel impatient. Calvin handled the filings, communicated with the title company, and made sure the disputed transfer could not be used for any new loan while the matter was being resolved. Nathan called me twice during that time. The first call lasted less than 5 minutes. He apologized for not asking more questions and said he had convinced himself that everything Brooke handled was legitimate, because it was easier than admitting he had stopped listening to me. The second call was quieter. He asked if he could come by alone. I agreed. He arrived on a Saturday morning and stood in my kitchen without sitting down. I am sorry, Mom, he said. I should have known better. I believed that he meant it. But an apology did not return trust to the place where it had been before. Nathan, I love you, I told him. But loving you does not mean giving you control over my life. He nodded and looked toward the hallway where the spare key used to hang. I had already changed the locks. I had also removed him as an authorized contact on several financial accounts, changed every password Brooke had ever helped create, and arranged for all property and insurance notices to come directly to me. Calvin helped me update my estate documents as well. Nothing dramatic. Nothing designed to punish anyone. I simply made sure no one could make decisions for me without my clear permission again. Brooke did not come to the house. She sent one message saying she was sorry that things had become so complicated. I read it once and deleted it. Complicated was not the word I would have chosen. The truth had become very simple. A few days later, Calvin called and told me the corrected ownership record had been accepted. I drove back to the county recorder's office the next morning. Diane Foster recognized me when I approached the counter. I was hoping I would see you again, she said. She searched the property record, then printed the updated document and slid it toward me. I looked at the owner line. Eleanor M. Whitaker. I read it slowly, not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to remember exactly how it felt. Diane asked if I wanted a certified copy. Yes, I said. I think I will keep this one somewhere safe. On the drive home, I stopped at the grocery store and bought a small white cake. I almost laughed when I realized what I was doing. 34 years earlier, Raymond had brought home a cake when we made our final mortgage payment. This time I asked the bakery clerk for blue icing. At home, I placed the cake on the kitchen table beside the old photograph of Raymond's crooked words. I did not try to copy his handwriting. I wrote only one thing, my home. Then I carried the certified record to the metal document box and placed it beside the original deed. The house had never truly been valuable to me because of what it was worth on paper. It was valuable because Raymond and I had built a life there, and because every room held a decision we had made together. Nathan and Brooke had almost taken more than property. They had almost taken my confidence in my own memory, my judgment, and my right to decide what happened next. That was what I refused to surrender. I stood in the front hallway that evening with the new key in my hand and listened to the quiet house around me. For the first time since Raymond died, the silence did not feel empty. Felt like mine. Subscribe to EverNest Stories for more emotional family betrayal stories, inheritance secrets, and mother's justice. And watch the next story on screen now.